Look, a HELOC can be your fast track to paying off your mortgage in record time, or it can be the most expensive financial mistake you'll ever make. And I'm not just talking about losing a little money here, I'm talking about losing your house. I've worked with people who become mortgage free in 3 to 7 years, and I've seen others end up with more debt than they started and a bank breathing down their neck. The difference? It's these 9 mistakes that I'm about to cover. Hey everyone, I'm Adam Carroll, founder of the Shred Method, and this channel is your go-to for smart, strategic money moves with your home equity. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the 9 life-altering mistakes I see people make when using a HELOC and exactly how to avoid every single one so you can fast-track your way to financial freedom. Let's get started. Mistake number 1 is jumping in without a plan. I can't tell you how many people I've met who are fired up about the idea, pulled a big chunk from their HELOC, slapped it on their mortgage, and then they froze. They're sitting there wondering, was that too much? Should I have done more? Do I wait until next month? Next paycheck? What do I do next? Here's the thing, without a plan, you're basically guessing. And every time you guess wrong, it costs you real money. And when your house is on the line, you can't afford to wing it like you're trying out a new recipe for dinner. I had a client, let's call him Mike, super smart guy. He loved spreadsheets. He thought he could just figure it out as he went. Well, 6 months later, Mike was scratching his head because, yes, he'd knocked some interest off, but nowhere near what was possible. He was leaving thousands of dollars in savings on the table. The fix? Before you even draw your first dollar, sit down and map out exactly when money comes in, when it goes out, and how much you'll keep on that HELOC balance. Treat this like a serious financial strategy that it is. When you have a plan, you can see exactly where you're headed, and you never have to wonder if you're doing it right. Mistake number 2. Speaking of doing it right, mistake number 2 is something I see all the time. Picking the wrong line of credit. I'll have people come to me excited about starting the Shred Method, and then I see the HELOC they've set up, and it's like trying to run a marathon in flip-flops. For example, I had a couple that was totally committed to the process, but their HELOC, it was a completely wrong product for this strategy. It was in a different bank than their checking account, which meant every transfer took 2 to 3 business days. That's like playing a fast-paced game in slow motion. It also had a variable rate, which shot up over a percentage point in just 6 months. Well, that little jump, it cost them hundreds of dollars extra in just interest. And worst of all, the HELOC forced them into a principal and interest payment, which totally killed their cash flow. The right HELOC is like a custom fit tool. It makes the job easier and faster. So here are some things you need to keep in mind when picking your HELOC. Number 1, it should be in the same bank as your checking account, so transfers are instantaneous. Number 2, interest-only payments during the draw period, so more cash stays in your system. And number 3, a fixed intro rate for at least a year or 2, so that you're not playing the guess the interest rate game month to month. Because if your HELOC isn't built for speed and efficiency, you're going to feel like you're sprinting uphill in the wrong shoes. Mistake number 3. Now, even with the perfect HELOC, there's one factor that can quietly eat away your savings, and that is bad timing. And that is also the 3rd mistake that people make. So using a HELOC for mortgage acceleration isn't just about what you pay, it's also when you pay it. There's a real art and science to this, and it all comes down to your average daily balance. Here's why it matters. Interest on a HELOC is calculated daily. The more days a large balance is sitting there, the more interest you're handing over to the bank. I had a client who was doing everything right, but she was making her lump sum mortgage payments from the HELOC 2 weeks before her paycheck hit the account. That meant the HELOC sat at a higher balance for nearly 2 weeks. Cost this family about $80 in extra interest that month alone. Now that doesn't sound like much until you realize it could have been significantly less with the right strategy. The fix is simple. Know exactly when your income drops in. Time your HELOC payments so that the big balance doesn't sit there longer than it needs to. And lastly, always be looking for ways to shorten that balance period. Because in this game, timing isn't just important, it's money in your pocket. Mistake number 4. While timing can quietly drain your savings, mistake number 4 is a loud, in-your-face budget buster, and it comes down to human nature. This is treating your HELOC like a free spending account. So here's what happens. You're working the plan, you're paying down your HELOC and your mortgage, and you start noticing that your available credit keeps going up. That little number on your statement, it looks better every month, month after month after month. And then the voice in your head kicks in. Hey, we've got some room here. Maybe we can redo the kitchen. Or finally grab that big Costco cart full of just in case snacks. Or maybe we should buy that jet ski that we saw last summer. I've seen this happen over and over again. I had a client who was absolutely crushing it, right on track to pay off their mortgage in under 8 years. And then they decided to just pull a little for a deck remodel, and then a vacation, and then some furniture. And 6 months later, all of that extra HELOC space that was supposed to go toward the mortgage, it was gone. And now they're paying interest on a bunch of stuff that wasn't building wealth for them. Here's the reality. Your HELOC is a tool. It is not a toy. It is not a free spending account. Every dollar you spend on fun is a dollar that's not crushing your mortgage principal, building equity, growing your net worth, and ultimately helping you attain financial freedom. The best way to think about it is this. This is like a semi-strict diet. Cheat too often and you can't expect the scale to move. Stay disciplined now and you'll have plenty of time and money for all of the fun stuff later, when you're debt-free and you're cash flowing like crazy. Mistake number 5. While the temptation can kill your progress in a big way, mistake number 5 just sort of creeps in over time and makes people give up entirely. It is called debt payoff fatigue. When you first start using a HELOC to pay off your mortgage, it's exciting. You see your mortgage balance drop faster than it ever has before. You're running the numbers and they look amazing. But somewhere around month 8 or month 10 or month 12, the novelty wears off. You're making the same moves over and over again, and you start thinking, gosh, are we still doing this? Is this even working? I just want to go buy a new purse or a pair of shoes. I want to take a golf outing. That is debt payoff fatigue, and it's very real. I've had clients call me ready to throw in the towel because they were bored. They missed the feeling of spending freely. Here's the thing. If you let fatigue win, you go back to the old way of living. And when you do that, you will go back to paying significant amounts of interest every single month, every time. The fix to this, track your wins and make them visible. Put a big chart on the fridge and watch the years melt off your mortgage term. Celebrate every milestone, even if it's small. And remember, this is not forever. You are trading a couple of years of focused effort for decades of financial freedom. One of my favorite sayings is this: if you do for 2 years what most people won't, you can do for the rest of your life what most people can't. Mistake number 6. Now, while fatigue makes people give up entirely, mistake number 6 slows them down tremendously as they become too conservative with their budgets. This one sounds harmless, but it can quietly rob you of years of progress. Here's how it happens. You look at your monthly expenses and you think, okay, we normally spend about $3,000 a month. But just to be safe, let's plan for $3,500 or maybe even $4,000. On the surface level, that feels smart. You're giving yourself a cushion. But here's the problem. Every extra dollar that you leave sitting in that just in case bucket is a dollar that isn't going into your HELOC to crush interest and go against your mortgage. I worked with a couple who was doing exactly this. They padded their budget by about $500 or $600 a month. When we tightened that number back to their actual spending, that freed up an extra $6,000 to $7,000 a year. And get this, that single adjustment shaved 2.5 years off their mortgage payoff date. So the takeaway is simple. Base your numbers on reality, not on fear. If you've been living on $3,000 a month, keep it there. Every extra dollar that flows into the system is worth double in avoided interest. That is a great stat to remember. Mistake number 7. Now, if being too conservative slows you down, mistake number 7 is like flooring it into a wall. It's what happens when people take on way too much HELOC balance at once. This is the exact opposite of being too conservative. It's going all in too fast. Here's what I mean. Some people hear about using a HELOC to pay off their mortgage and they think, well, if a $20,000 draw works, imagine what a $50,000 draw could do. It sounds great until that bigger balance comes with a bigger interest payment every single month. And suddenly all of the extra income that you're going to use to pay the HELOC down, well, it's being eaten by the interest payment on that higher balance. We call it cannibalizing your discretionary income. I had a client, let's just call him Kevin, who was so excited to make big moves that he maxed out his HELOC draw right out of the gate. Within 3 months, he called me saying, Adam, I feel like we're on a treadmill here. We're running hard, but it doesn't really feel like we're getting anywhere. That's because his sweet spot wasn't the higher end of his HELOC. It was much closer to maybe $10,000 or $20,000. And here's the lesson. There is a sweet spot for your HELOC balance, which is big enough to make real progress on your mortgage, but small enough that you're not choking on interest payments. When we work with clients, we figure that number out on day one, so you never have to feel stuck like Kevin did. Mistake number 8. While taking on too much balance can kill your momentum, mistake number 8 is more about your mindset when you lose sight of the bigger picture. Now, paying off your mortgage is awesome, but it's not just about having a zero balance on that statement. When most people start this process, they've got a reason. It might be retiring early. That's a great one. It might be buying a rental property for extra income. This makes it much easier to do so. It might be cash flowing college so your kids don't graduate with a mountain of debt. Whatever your why is, you've got to keep that front and center. Because here's what happens. People get a couple years in, their mortgage is shrinking fast, their net worth is going up, and they start to relax. They slip back into old spending habits. And before you know it, the banks are back in control. I had a client, we'll call her Julie, who started with a crystal clear goal. She wanted to retire at 55 and travel. And she was on track. But about 2 years in, she stopped looking at her payoff chart. She stopped tracking the numbers, and she started rewarding herself with upgrades. And within 6 months, that progress slowed way down, and that 55-year-old retirement plan started looking a little more like 60 and a little more like 61 and 62. How to fix this? Write your big picture goal down. Put it somewhere you see it every single day. Your bathroom mirror, your phone lock screen, the front of your microwave, wherever. Because if you remember why you're doing this, staying disciplined gets a whole lot easier. Mistake number 9. And speaking of discipline, mistake number 9 is the one that can completely derail your plan, not because of what you do, but because of who you listen to. It's because you start listening to the advice of broke people. And I know this one might ruffle some feathers, but it needs to be said. The moment you tell friends or family you're using this strategy, using a HELOC to pay off your mortgage, if you mention the shred method, somebody is going to say, that's crazy. Why would you pay off a 3% mortgage? You should invest that money instead. Now, in some cases, they might mean well. But let's be honest. Most of the people giving that advice are the same ones that are making minimum payments on their credit cards. They're leasing a new car every 3 years, and they're giving away 30 to 40% of their income every year in interest. And number 4, they are completely illiquid. They have no access to capital whatsoever. If you want different results, you've got to do different things. And sometimes that means tuning out the people who are playing the banker's game, the one where you work for 40 years just to retire on half the income that you couldn't get by on in the first place. When I stopped listening to the "you're crazy" crowd, I went from paying the bank tens of thousands of dollars in interest every year to taking month-long trips with my family, paying cash for cars, and maxing out retirement accounts. That's not luck. That's what happens when you follow a proven system and you block out the noise. In conclusion, if you avoid these 9 mistakes, a HELOC can be one of the most powerful tools in your financial toolbox, helping you pay off your mortgage years ahead of schedule and freeing you up to invest, to travel, or simply breathe a little bit easier. If you want to know exactly how to do this without guessing, that's where the shred method comes in. We've helped thousands of people pay off their mortgage faster, saving tens and in many cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars in interest, and completely change their financial future as a result. You can learn more at www.theshredmethod.com. It will also be linked down in the description. And if you found this video helpful, do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe for more strategic money moves, and share this with someone who's thinking about using a HELOC. You could literally save them thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or more importantly, maybe even their house. Remember, your house should be your greatest asset building tool, not your greatest liability. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.